Tonight on Primetime, with the ceasefire deal now signed, oil is once again flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. But tension between the US and Israel, plus fresh warnings from Hezbollah, all signal stormy waters may be on the horizon. Peace for now, but problems lurking. Good evening. Details of the newly signed ceasefire agreement between the United States and Iran are expected to be released in the coming days ahead of a formal signing in Switzerland on Friday. Now, the deal would reportedly extend the current truce and outline steps on sanctions relief, energy flows, and a wider de-escalation framework.
The United States and Iran are expected to publish details of a new ceasefire agreement in the coming days, with a formal signing in Switzerland on Friday. The Memorandum of Understanding, signed this week but not yet made public, extends the current ceasefire by another 60 days. The reported 14-point agreement commits both sides to ending hostilities on all fronts. It also avoids new sanctions or military buildups. Under the framework, Iran would reopen the Strait of Hormuz to oil tankers and commercial shipping within 30 days. In turn, the United States would lift restrictions on Iranian ports and allow Iran to resume oil exports. Already there have been signs of loosening up of the Strait of Hormuz. At least 2 large oil tankers, run by state-owned National Iranian Tanker Company, reportedly moved past a US naval blockade on Wednesday, the first shipment in nearly 2 months. They are carrying around 3.8 million barrels of crude oil. The deal reaffirms Iran's pledge not to develop nuclear weapons, which has been confirmed by US President Donald Trump. However, discussions on Tehran's wider nuclear program will continue. Iran has maintained that its nuclear activities are for peaceful purposes. Officials from both sides say the deal could bring major economic benefits to Iran, including sanctions relief and access to frozen foreign assets. It also proposes a $300 billion fund, backed by Gulf states, to help Iran recover from war damage and losses, provided Tehran complies with the agreement. However, questions remain over Israel's role. US Vice President J.D. Vance said the agreement includes Israel and Lebanon, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is not bound by the deal. Hezbollah has also warned that a lasting truce would be difficult unless Israel withdraws from southern Lebanon. The conflict has killed more than 7,000 people across the region, mainly in Iran and Lebanon. Meanwhile, oil prices fell to their lowest level in 3 months, as hopes grew that the agreement could ease tensions and improve stability across the Middle East.
Masoud Pezeshkian says Tehran is prepared for all scenarios in the long-standing conflict with the US. Well, both countries are seeking to avoid escalating tension before they sign their peace agreement, stated for Friday in Switzerland. Touraj Shirililo reports now from Tehran.
Hosting on the social media platform X, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said that the final deal with the US has not been achieved, stressing that Tehran is ready for all scenarios to serve its national interests. He added that as Iran prepares for all options, the country has learned from its leaders not to be humiliated. In the latest development following the ceasefire deal announced on Monday, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi spoke by phone with Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi. According to official sources, they discussed the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the US, as well as bilateral issues. Oman has been one of the key mediators, hosting indirect talks, as well as facilitating exchange of messages between Tehran and Washington. Meanwhile, the governor of Iran's central bank has announced that there are clauses in the peace agreement that ensure the unblocking of Iran's frozen funds. The semi-official Tasnim news agency quoted Abdul Nasser Hemmati as saying that factors were considered in deciding the provisions related to the release of assets. The bank's chief added that efforts have been made to ensure that the mechanisms in the agreement provide highest possible level of certainty for access to these financial resources. During the mediated ceasefire talks, Iran demanded the release of its funds, reportedly estimated at around $60 billion, that have been locked in countries including China, India, Japan, Qatar, South Korea, the UAE, and the US. Hemmati is currently in Russia to develop monetary and banking ties in the wake of Western sanctions against Tehran and Moscow. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran, for A News.
Now, while the deal has eased tensions and calmed markets, key questions remain about what comes next. Well, joining us now in the studio is Cornelia Mayer, Chief Economist at LBV Asset Management. Cornelia, it's great to see you. We've spoken a number of times. It's the first time we've had you in the studio, so we're very honoured. A very difficult period this, isn't it, for markets, energy markets in particular. Beyond the politics, is this ultimately an economic agreement, you think, designed to stabilise markets, keep things calm and prevent any further economic shocks?
Well, thank you for your hospitality in your beautiful studio, first of all. It is economically incredibly important because what the closure of the Strait of Hormuz did to markets, you saw, I mean, they were seesawing with every statement, yes, positive or negative. It was also with oil markets because, you know, you had 20% of oil and oil products come through the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of LNG comes through the Strait of Hormuz. More importantly, 30% of nitrogen-based fertilizer comes through, yes, the Strait of Hormuz. So this is really very, very important. It's important for the whole world. It's especially important for the developing world, who just gets priced out of the market with the rich Europeans and East Asians competing for LNG cargoes from America, with only that much fertilizer to go around, and the planting season in the global south to be imminent. So it came sort of at the last possible moment, because also we've survived. The reason oil prices didn't go up more is we survived on living off inventories. Yes. And they will, people say, or experts say, by about August there would be a tank button, so there's no more crude to go around. So it doesn't come once. This agreement, if it holds, doesn't come 1 second too early.
And for Iran, of course, the oil will now flow, assets will be unfrozen. I mean, do you think this could be transformational for the Iranian economy? Well,
inshallah, it will happen like this, because we still need to see how it really all will end up. There's not just Iran and the US in this equation. There's another country in the equation. They will need to play ball as well. But I would say, yes, it would be very important, because look, Iran has had crippling sanctions. Since 79, there have been sanctions of one sort or another. And this would be very, very important for the country. And always when you have sanctions, it is the average man in the street who suffers the most.
Indeed. And in terms of markets, everybody has been sort of transfixed on trying to figure out, will oil prices drop? Will market turbulence die down? What are you expecting to see from markets? A cautious positivity, perhaps?
Well, markets will always, especially oil markets are driven by greed and fear. And they buy on the rumor and they sell on the fact. So that's the things that happen with markets, right? So what I expect is, right now we see oil prices drop. They will drop some further, but at some stage reality will kick in, because all the ships are in the wrong place. So, and for a ship to go from the Strait of Hormuz, let's say, to Japan, that takes more than a month. So it will take time for things to sort out. We also had to, shut in quite a few oil fields, because they all had nowhere to go and storage was full. So one can take oil from storage, but restarting those oil fields will take time. It's not a light switch. We also don't know just how much damage has been done to the fields during the course of the war. We know that 17% of Qatari LNG production has been taken off, and that will take 2 to 3 years to restore. But we don't really know, so I wouldn't hold my breath for them to go too low. And let's not forget, we've taken all the oil out of the strategic petroleum reserves, other national and private inventories. They need to be refilled. So there's going to be an enormous demand for oil for the next few months.
And we don't know, as you rightly say, all of the ramifications, all of the details even at this stage. We have heard, though, about reportedly the $300 billion reconstruction and recovery fund. I mean, if this does materialise, this could be one of the most significant economic injections that Iran has had, for decades, couldn't it?
Since the Shah left, essentially. And this would be transformational for Iran. And I believe when you want to have peace, I believe in the carrot more than I believe in the stick. So I think that's probably going to be a nice carrot if it works. And there's also the Iranian assets that have been frozen. So it could be a way forward also for other conflicts if this works out. And it's a big if still. If it works out, it could be a good template for what one can do to end the conflict and get a warring party on one side.
Because there was so much negativity, Cornelia, wasn't there? There has been during the conflict, predictions of, the Gulf states will never go back to being what they once were. That doesn't look to be the case. There looks to be more resilience there than perhaps some economists initially anticipated.
I never said that. And do not underestimate the Gulf states. They have created a phenomenal business model as an island of stability in a sea of conflict. It's not just Iran. We have Sudan, we have Somalia, Somaliland, Libya. We have all sorts. Yemen. We have all sorts of conflicts. So kudos to them, and especially kudos to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who has, with its east to west pipeline during the Iran-Iraq war, said, well, we don't quite trust this, so maybe Hormuz will close at some stage, and built a pipeline. And we're able pretty quickly to up it to 7 million barrels a day going through it. And that's wisdom, and you can only do that with a national oil company. Because if you were an Exxon or a stock market quoted company and you had a big asset like a pipeline from the east to the country to the west of the country sitting producing nothing for 40 years, shareholders wouldn't let you do that.
Indeed. Cornelia, it's always great to hear analysis, even better to have it here in the studio. We thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, after the break, Russia and Ukraine are once again trading long-range attacks, with civilians killed, cities damaged, and drone warfare expanding far beyond the front lines. As diplomacy struggles to gain momentum, is the conflict entering another dangerous phase? Don't go away. A warm welcome back to Primetime. Russian attacks have killed at least 4 people in Ukraine's east and southeast, with damage reported across several cities. The latest strikes came as both sides reported overnight drone activity far from the front lines.
A series of Russian attacks on Ukraine overnight killed at least 4 people and wounded more than a dozen others, according to Ukrainian officials. Regional authorities of Zaporizhzhia said waves of Russian drones struck the city, killing 1 person in a car and injuring 7 others. A residential building and a shopping centre caught fire, while an educational institution was also damaged.
You can't move around the city freely. This is already, you see, my second time. The first time I was caught in the blast myself. I was on my way to work. And the second time it was with my family. You can't just calmly go out to the store.
In this case, what's happening now is simply genocide against our people, intimidation and things like that.
Officials said Zaporizhzhia was struck 5 times during the attack. Further east in the Donetsk region, prosecutors said Russian bomb attacks on Sloviansk killed 3 people and injured 5 others. The city is part of Ukraine's heavily fortified defensive belt and remains a key target in Russia's slow advance through the region. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry said its air defenses destroyed 157 Ukrainian drones overnight over several Russian regions and the Black Sea. Ukraine's military also reported continuing heavy Russian losses, saying Moscow allegedly has lost more than 1.38 million troops since the start of its full-scale invasion in 2022.
Well, joining us now is the Emmy award-winning journalist and documentary maker Maria Ulyanovska, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. in the United States. Maria, great to see you there. Thank you for joining us tonight. Russia continues to strike cities far from the front line, doesn't it? What message do you think is Moscow trying to send here?
Well, Russian message is not new, and it's quite frankly quite desperate. It's trying to show that nowhere in Ukraine is safe. It's trying to pressure Ukrainian civilians for concessions. It's trying to kill people's morale. It's trying to terrorize peaceful people who are living in their homes far from front lines. And it's aimed on wearing down Ukrainian civilians, but also the Western partners. It's aiming to show that Russia can keep on going as long as it needs by terrorizing Ukrainian people and peaceful civilians, and to demonstrate that it can sustain this war in the terror way that it has been doing it for so long. And it tries to show that it retains the escalation dominance, because Russian attacks are aimed on Ukrainian civilians, when Ukrainian attacks are mostly aimed on Russian energy infrastructure to stop this war. So it's a quite desperate move to try to kill as many people as possible and to bring as much horror as possible to show the strength of the upper hand in this war.
Maria, we know that Ukraine have become world leaders when it comes to military drone technology, military drone innovation. But of course, drones have fundamentally changed things for the worse too, right? Because people are living in fear. The whole nature of this war has changed completely.
Absolutely, drones have changed not only the war in Ukraine, but the modern warfare as it is. And it's not only stated by Ukraine or by the experts that follow this war. It's also the reality that a lot of governments and a lot of military experts are facing these days. And we even saw that beyond Ukraine when the Iran war started. We saw how the United States were trying to intercept Shahed drones that were also terrorizing Ukraine, produced by Iran, with Patriot missiles. And Patriot missile, one missile costs around $4 million, when the Shahed drone production is around 20, 30, 40 hundreds, dozens, thousands of dollars. So it's shown that modern warfare is not about manpower as much, and artillery and tanks and ballistic missiles, as it is about drones these days, because it's so much cheaper in production, and it's a new thing, it's a new technology that is, by the way, constantly evolving. It's a huge competition happening between Russia and Ukraine and everyone around trying to get a hold of these new technologies with using AI in drone warfare. So it definitely has changed the modern warfare, and it also helped Ukraine to change how this war was going. We know that Russia has the upper hand in manpower. Ukraine doesn't have as much people to fight in this war as Russia does, but it doesn't help Russia much, because Ukraine, since I think May, has been able to kill more Russian soldiers that Russia can mobilize at this point. And it is because of the drone warfare. In May, there was a first operation of Ukrainians getting specific positions on the battlefield without spending one soldier. It was all done with drone weapons. So it's an absolutely new reality that we're living in. And we know that a lot of Ukrainians are producing drones now. People are building new companies. It's a constant competition, and Ukraine has an upper hand in that so far, which really helps a lot on the battlefield.
Maria, has diplomacy got any chance of sort of breaking through, do you think, at the moment, while both sides continue prosecuting military pressure, escalating? I mean, is it even diplomacy that we're seeing, or just sort of tactical PR, if you like?
Well, history has shown us that wars are rarely fought and negotiated on separate tracks. It usually happens simultaneously with diplomacy and escalation, because each party is trying to strengthen its hand in the negotiations before it has to make any concessions. And both Moscow and Kyiv are trying to improve their negotiating position. But it's also interesting that we've seen this in this G7 summit, that the dominance of Ukraine on the battlefield was proven and accepted by the leaders of the G7 countries. Even Donald Trump has signed the communique which says that Ukraine has improved its situation on the battlefield. And this is the time to stop Russia, to stop this war, because Ukraine has an upper hand in this war. So we came from Ukraine has no cards to Ukraine is now being a dominant party in this conflict. And we have seen that over the past year and a half, U.S. held efforts with peace diplomacy, with appeasing Russia, did not bring any result. And the U.S. administration themselves acknowledged this. Marco Rubio said that. So I think we are seeing the evolution of approach in this. I think everyone at this point understands and acknowledges that appeasing Russia doesn't bring negotiations anywhere. Russia is pretending to be a part of these negotiations without even doing any real concessions or any real talks. And even Giorgia Meloni, who is an Italian prime minister and the ally of President Trump, has said this recently, that the United States have made so many steps towards Russia, and it's time for Russia to start making some steps towards the United States. And that is made possible by pressuring Russia, both from the outside world with sanctions, but also from the inside, from within, with Ukrainian strikes deep into Russian territory. We've seen that Russia didn't really have a full-blown military parade this year. They are canceling their festivities because they understand that it's not safe anymore. They understand that Ukraine has the power to strike anywhere Ukraine wants. And so far, Ukraine has been very diligent about striking the oil refineries and energy infrastructure. But it is a point of pressure to put Russia in the position where Russia starts negotiating in good faith.
Yeah, you're right to mention that, Maria. I mean, Ukraine has certainly come a long way from the "you don't have the cards" moment that we all remember. I mean, is the weather playing any sort of part here? Are we seeing signs of a summer offensive? You know, a war of attrition becoming ever more intense at the moment because actually the season sort of enables that?
I would say that it's definitely both. So Russia is absolutely trying to get more military gains on the battlefield to then report to Putin, and for Putin to be able to say that he's winning this war. He recently said that he has gained more territory in Ukraine than the overall territory of Ukraine. So they need to keep this fantasy living in Putin's head. But if we look at the facts, we can see that, yes, they have started their offensive, but it is nowhere as mighty as it was in 2022. We see that according to deep state data analysis, Russian territorial gains in May were around 14 square kilometers. And this is with the tremendous cost of this war for their economy, with the tremendous cost to their manpower. They're losing more than 30,000 people per month. And they're not able to gain a lot of territories. So yes, they are making, they're terrorizing Ukrainian population to prove some point. But we also know that Ukrainians have regained a lot more territory that Russians were able to get in their summer offensive. We have heard that there would be a spring offensive, then there would be summer offensive, and it's going to be so grandiose. But so far, if we look at the facts and if we look at how the battlefield is moving, we just see that Russia brings destruction, obviously, and death and horrors to the territories that it is able to occupy. But those territorial gains are so minimal compared to the cost of these gains that it's really hard to put common sense into why Russia keeps doing that, except for the fact that maybe they don't see any other option on how to end this conflict, and they just keep going because it's a conflict for them that powers the power of Putin.
Yeah, indeed. Maria, the majority of people around the world obviously are hoping for some sign soon of an end to this war. I mean, you cover both the military side of things and the diplomatic side. Where should people be looking over the coming weeks for any indications that progress is possible?
So we should definitely watch both the military and the diplomatic course, and I think the military situation will shape the diplomatic course. And we have seen this during this G7 summit, where countries have stated that Ukraine is winning and it is time to pressure Russia to make it cross the final line when it's ready to make some concessions, because obviously Putin has to realize at some point that he cannot keep doing this war anymore. So I would also watch three things: whether Russia can achieve meaningful breakthroughs during the summer campaign, which so far doesn't look very positive for Russia. Second is whether Ukraine achieves and receives additional air defense systems and missiles, because that is the key point for Ukraine to save the life of the civilians that Russia keeps attacking with ballistic missiles. And the third and the most important one is whether President Trump will take a firm stance in this war, now that he has sort of dealt with the Iran crisis. It seems to be so far behind him, and he can turn his attention back to the Russian war in Ukraine that he keeps saying that he wants to end as soon as possible, that he has solved 8 wars and that's the war he thought would be the easiest. So between now and the midterm elections in the US, the experts are saying that if Trump can solve the war and bring a just peace to Ukraine, he can really help the ratings of him and his party that have suffered after the lasting conflict in Iran. So we will see what happens with that. So far, President Trump was optimistic. He said that he could impose more sanctions in Russia now that the Strait of Hormuz is open, but we haven't seen any real actions yet. So that would be one of the things I would definitely follow this summer to see how this conflict evolves.
Maria, great speaking to you. As always, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business stories shaping the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away. Welcome back to Primetime. Now, Katie Wilson is here with the business. Katie, what have you got on your agenda tonight?
So we'll have more on the US trade blacklist and who is and who isn't affected, as well as the latest from Wall Street and a bit more about SpaceX's market debut and what that's all about. So first this evening, China's AI ambitions are getting a temporary reprieve from Washington. The Trump administration has reportedly delayed plans to place AI startup DeepSeek and more than 100 other Chinese firms on a trade blacklist as it seeks to avoid further inflaming tensions with Beijing.
DeepSeek has avoided being added to a US trade blacklist. Sources have told Reuters that Washington has held off updating the so-called entity list. DeepSeek and more than 100 other Chinese companies, including chipmaker CXMT, had been approved for addition to the list last year by an interagency committee. That's according to exclusive new reporting by Reuters. The Chinese AI startup has been in Washington's crosshairs for some time. Last year, the US State Department said the firm was aiding Beijing's military and intelligence operations. It also accused DeepSeek of trying to use shell companies to illegally acquire advanced US chips. This year, Anthropic accused its Chinese rival of illicit efforts to extract capabilities from its Claude AI model. OpenAI also told lawmakers that DeepSeek was targeting its models. The latest news means Washington hasn't added any names to the entity list since October. what one expert says is the longest stretch without additions in over a decade. That comes as the Trump administration tries to ease tensions with China. US firms cannot ship goods, software or tech to firms on the list without a license, which is likely to be denied. There was no immediate comment on the Reuters report from US officials or any of the companies involved.
Wall Street closed mixed on Tuesday as investors weighed record highs against weaknesses in technology stocks. The Nasdaq and S&P 500 both fell, with high-flying AI names coming under pressure ahead of a key Federal Reserve decision on interest rates.
Wall Street's main indexes ended mixed on Tuesday, with the Dow gaining just under 0.2% to notch its second straight record high close, while the S&P 500 shed more than 0.5% and the Nasdaq dropped more than 1%. Shares of Elon Musk's SpaceX ended nearly 5% higher, pairing earlier gains. For much of the session, the rocket and AI company's value was above that of Amazon, and it briefly surpassed Microsoft's valuation as retail investors continued to pour into the stock after its record-breaking IPO. But Amal Dargalkar, chairman and managing partner at Chatham Financial, warned of several risks that could trigger volatility for SpaceX and other AI-related stocks.
I think that's a really difficult position to be in as a retail investor, especially when you consider the fact that there is a lot of risk, not just in the business model, but these are names where the cash flows are likely far into the future, and we are not in a period of 0% or negative interest rates or even declining interest rates at this point. There's a lot of question as to whether interest rates will continue to be flat or will they go up. And that can certainly be a meaningful drag on valuations of high growth companies, especially where that growth is out far into the future.
Investors will look for clues on where interest rates are headed when the Federal Reserve concludes its latest two-day policy meeting on Wednesday, with Kevin Warsh holding his first press conference as Fed chair. Other stocks on the move included shares of Olin, which sank nearly 6% after the chemical producer said it would acquire Huntsman in an all-stock deal valued at more than $2.4 billion. Huntsman shares also fell as the offer stood at a discount to the stock's recent price. And shares of Yum Brands rose after the fast food company said it would sell its Pizza Hut chain for $2.7 billion against a backdrop of softer consumer spending across the fast food industry.
Well, investors are continuing to pile into Elon Musk's SpaceX. The stock surged again on Tuesday, briefly overtaking Microsoft and pushing the company past Amazon in market value. That's just days after its blockbuster stock market debut.
Elon Musk's SpaceX is now worth more than Amazon. Shares of the rocket maker soared as much as 17% on Tuesday, catapulting the company's market value past Amazon's and briefly above Microsoft's. That makes SpaceX the fifth most valuable company in the world, just days after its blockbuster public debut. If the gains hold, shares will have jumped more than 60% above the $135 IPO price, giving SpaceX a market cap of around $2.8 trillion. Not bad for a company that reported a net loss last year of nearly $5 billion. The stock rally is likely to continue as SpaceX gains fast-track inclusion in the Nasdaq 100, making it a major holding for passive funds and ETFs that track the index. FTSE Russell and MSCI are also set to add the stock to their indexes effective later this month. SpaceX options also began trading on Tuesday. More than 500,000 contracts changed hands in just the first hour, making SpaceX the most heavily traded name ever among companies on their first day of trading options, according to Trade Alert data. The company also made news by announcing on Tuesday that it will buy Anysphere, the startup behind the popular AI coding agent Cursor, in an all-stock deal valued at $60 billion. The acquisition aims to give SpaceX's xAI a stronger hold in the revenue-generating business of AI coding.
BMW is warning of a tougher road ahead. Shares in the German carmaker slumped after it cut its profit outlook, citing weak demand in China and the growing economic fallout from the conflict in the Middle East. Let's take a look.
BMW shares fell by more than 7% after the German automaker issued a profit warning late on Tuesday. The premium carmaker blamed ongoing weakness in the world's largest auto market, China, and the impact of the Iran war on prices and consumer sentiment. Analysts said the outlook cut was significantly larger than expected and signaled a broader strategic rethink. Share prices dipped to their lowest level since November 2020 and dragged down rivals Volkswagen and Mercedes. BMW lowered its operating auto margin to 1 to 3% from 4 to 6% and said it would intensify cost cutting with a negative one-off in the second half of the year. Jefferies analysts said the comments suggested the overhaul will largely impact German operations and BMW may address its global assembly footprint business model. For decades, European car makers' margins were boosted by strong business in China, but have been overtaken by local brands in recent years. BMW said it could not operate in isolation of the situation, and market momentum in the US and Europe could not offset the decline. The company said the impact from the Middle East conflict had turned out to be worse than initially expected, with higher energy prices and deteriorating global consumer sentiment due to the lack of stability.
Now, Europe's battle over drug prices is intensifying. Major pharmaceutical companies are warning governments they could scale back investment and delay new medicines as policymakers push for tighter controls on healthcare spending.
Big Pharma is receiving pushback from European capitals on drug pricing, so they're turning to a playbook that brought them success in the UK, making threats to pull investment plans to pressure policymakers. The industry notched a win when the British government agreed to increase medicine spending as part of a broader deal to avoid US-imposed tariffs. The latest nation to face pressure is Germany, which has been debating legislation to tighten spending on medicines. A Reuters European pharma correspondent, Maggie Fick, said pressure in the last week has ramped up.
The CEO of Pfizer wrote a letter to the German chancellor warning that their future investments in the country may be at risk over these proposed changes to pricing laws.
Meanwhile, AstraZeneca warned that it may not launch new medicines in Germany if these changes go ahead. Earlier in June, Eli Lilly announced it would halve a planned $2.7 billion investment, also citing the proposed legislation. This bid to cap costs has centred Germany in a broader tussle between drug makers and European governments that began several months ago. That tension has been sharpened by the impact on Europe of US President Donald Trump's pricing push. This aims to tie prescription medicine prices in the lucrative US market to lower prices elsewhere, including in Europe. Major drug makers have struck deals with the White House to lower drug costs in exchange for tariff exemptions, adding to pressure for increasing prices elsewhere.
And finally, as the race to build the infrastructure behind artificial intelligence accelerates, some communities are pushing back. In Ohio, residents living near a massive new Meta data center say the project is changing their way of life and raising concerns about transparency, the environment, and who really benefits from the AI boom.
We want to raise our kids in the country, a nice quiet setting, and that's all kind of being taken away from us now.
For Ohio resident Brianne Kidd, the construction of Meta's 800-acre Bowling Green data center across from her country home could upend the lifestyle she spent years building for her family.
What it's taken away is our beautiful sunrise I saw every single morning. Now we see buildings and cranes, and that's the reason why we moved here, things like that. You know, to live in God's country and not Meta's country.
Kidd, who runs a daycare for toddlers in her home, is also on edge due to construction of a large natural gas power plant meant to serve Meta's data center.
You know, I feel like I'm living next to a threat, and my family and my daycare families, their safety is my number one priority, and I feel like right now I can't guarantee that. And that's what makes me most upset.
The plant is one of dozens of large off-grid power projects being approved rapidly and often under a cover of secrecy across the United States. That's according to a Reuters review of regulatory filings and interviews. These plants, built to serve a single data center within the tech industry, are moving ahead fast, sometimes in just weeks or months. That means they're getting the green light without the years of permitting, environmental studies, and public hearings typically required. But developers argue many of these rules are exempt for private customers looking to build off-grid plants.
History shows that they have not been good neighbors.
Retired police officer Christina Coltrip is worried she'll have to move when the data center is in full swing. Air quality is just one concern, even though the EPA says it is taking a deliberate, governance-driven approach to such projects.
If you look in Memphis, Tennessee, the air pollution is just horrendous, and the EPA is not doing anything. If you look at in Georgia, there's some wells, and I've got some picture where it looks like coffee grounds coming out.
A researcher at Harvard University told Reuters the AI industry's natural gas generation, quote, is emerging as one of the largest under-examined air quality risks in the country. But supporters say such projects are essential for rapid AI development, serving tech companies without hiking consumer electricity prices. Here's Gary Thompson, Executive VP of Regional Growth Partnership, an economic development organization serving Northwest Ohio.
Our goal for data centers in Northwest Ohio is to build wealth for our communities so that our schools are funded, our parks are funded, people that live in these communities have the kind of services that they need and desire, and also to build the brand of Northwest Ohio to be associated with big tech companies that are global presence so that we can attract other types of investment to Northwest Ohio as well.
Ohio lawmakers also recently passed provisions shielding big projects like data centers from public records laws. Officials releasing such information could be criminally charged, according to the measure, which was inserted into an unrelated college athletics bill.
We should all come first, and our opinions should matter. I know there's been several meetings and council meetings, and that building over there has been packed. And we've all voiced our opinions that we don't want this here, and it's still happening.
That's your business news for this evening. Back to you, Guy.
Great stuff, Katie. Thank you very much, as always. Okay, after the break, world leaders are gathering at the G7 summit amid wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, economic uncertainty and growing questions about global leadership. We'll look at the key issues dominating the agenda. Don't go away. Welcome back to Primetime. Well, US President Donald Trump wrapped up the Group of Seven summit in Evian-les-Bains in France with a news conference on Wednesday as global attention remained focused on the Memorandum of Understanding released at the gathering. Well, on the summit's final day, G7 leaders held talks with partner countries on boosting economic growth and gathered for a working lunch focused on innovation and artificial intelligence alongside leading global technology executives. Mr. Trump and fellow G7 leaders also underscored their support for Ukraine, citing Kyiv's improved position on the battlefield. In a joint statement, they pledged continued backing for Ukraine and announced fresh sanctions against Russia, a move that could strengthen Kyiv's hand in any future peace negotiations with Moscow. Well, for the latest from the summit, let's bring in now our very own Andy Mioch. Andy, great to have you with us. So it's all wrapped up now. Lots to discuss, I guess. I mean, not least Mr. Trump announcing he's the boss. That seemed to attract quite a bit of attention from people. But other than that, what have been the dominant themes emerging from this year's summit?
Well, as you've said, it's wrapped up, and it's quite obvious now that the Iran war and the Ukraine war were the dominant items on the agenda. Donald Trump just finished one of the press conferences he had today, this final one for now, at least of today. He said that he briefed his fellow G7 leaders on the Iran Memorandum of Understanding, widely expected to be signed in Switzerland this Friday. But he did say that it's not final yet, leaving some room there for some speculation that the deal might be derailed for whatever reason. But he again threatened Iran to behave Otherwise, the U.S. will start bombing them again. He spoke on some of the details of that memorandum, saying that regarding those frozen Iranian funds, he said that the U.S. has taken a lot of Iran's money and that it's going to have to give it back at some point. He said that the technical discussions on nuclear stockpiles with Iran will begin immediately. Now, some 2 to 3 hours ago, the host, French President Emmanuel Macron, was giving his closing remarks, and he called this summit a success, saying it was a moment of unity on the war in the east of Europe. Macron said the G7 leaders agreed that the balance has shifted in favor of Ukraine in its war against Russia, and that the group of seven has, for the first time, come out with clear conclusions on the subject of the Ukraine war. It's pretty obvious he was referring to the US president signing off on that joint declaration for the first time when it comes to Ukraine. That declaration was published very early in the morning, right after midnight local time. In that declaration, it says that G7 leaders commit to increase the pressure on Russian war economy and to strengthen sanctions, including those on the oil and gas sectors. The document also welcomed the US-Iran agreement and backed an international mission headed by the UK and France to protect ships in the Strait of Hormuz. It also touched on the Indo-Pacific, where it says that the G7 is opposed to any unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the East and South China Seas and across the Taiwan Strait. North Korea was also mentioned as a concern due to its nuclear and ballistic programs, among other things. There were some thematic declarations that were adopted during these 3 days in Evian. They were concerning global partnerships, fighting cancer, which is a first for the G7, fight against human trafficking, and coordinating the response to the Ebola outbreak, among others.
A range of different themes then, but it seems like Ukraine and Middle East were really dominating, Andy.
Indeed, Guy, they were, and not only the main events where you would expect them to, but also those bilaterals held at the sidelines. For example, we've seen the US president today with Egypt's El Sisi. They were holding an open to the press bilateral meeting. He spoke on Iran and on Ukraine. He echoed the same sentiments we mentioned in the start of the conversation, that he's going to bomb Iran if they do not sign this deal on Friday in Switzerland. When it comes to Ukraine, a part of, besides those sanctions on Russia and the pressure on Moscow, the joint declaration that we mentioned says that the G7 has agreed to increase the delivery of air defense systems and interceptors to Kiev, as well as long-range missiles. One of the topics discussed in France was also granting Ukraine licenses to produce some of these badly needed Western weapons systems right there at home near the front lines. And in an interesting piece of news today, away from France, Reuters reported that the office of the EU Council President Antonio Costa has made contacts with the Kremlin over the past few weeks to open communication channels. Now, this official, the anonymous official, was quoted by the news agency as saying that in any future scenario, the EU has specific interests that will need to be defended. Therefore, it's important to have established diplomatic channels with Russia. And back in Evian, at the closing of the summit, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni renewed her call for a single EU envoy to handle contacts with the Russians over Ukraine, and she cautioned that the role should not go to anyone from Europe's largest, the bloc's largest countries, adding she would instead look at those, quote, medium sized powers within the EU.
Very interesting indeed. I mean, and obviously security, Andy, is a great concern for all of these great powers around the table. But the economy too, I mean, they're all, by definition, the biggest economies, but equally, each of the economies of those nations aren't exactly having a wonderfully easy time at the moment.
No, they're not. And a big part of it is energy, of course, with the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. But we've seen some recovery on the global markets, especially this week after a preliminary deal was announced between Iran and the U.S. This summit also focused on two other things equally important, especially once if the Iran conflict ends, and that is artificial intelligence and critical minerals. The G7 has formed what it calls the Critical Minerals Resilience and Production Alliance, citing concerns over economic coercion via export restrictions and retaliatory measures on critical minerals. Many see this as a clear reference to Beijing's throttling of rare earth exports that rattle industries across the world. On the artificial intelligence side of things, as you've mentioned a bit before, there was a working lunch gathering the G7 leaders with the executives of top AI companies such as Anthropic, OpenAI, DeepMind, Mistral, and others. According to the Elysée, there were talks on frontier AI risks, sovereignty, infrastructure, and the protection of children online. Now, these AI lunch talks come after the White House on Friday barred one of the leading companies, Anthropic, from giving access to its most advanced new models of artificial intelligence to foreign nationals. Anthropic then said, okay, you are banning foreign nationals, we are taking the models offline for everyone. And the executives of the company are now in talks with the Trump administration on how to resolve the issue and bring these sophisticated AI models back online. When asked today on the Anthropic issue, Trump said that the talks with the representatives of the artificial intelligence company were going, quote, fine. We've heard from European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen as well. She said that it was in the mutual interest of the United States and the European Union that the EU gets access to the best AI models. And in this case, she was clearly referring to the US-made AI models. Now, half a world away, Beijing today unveiled its white paper on global governance, which in some parts concerns artificial intelligence. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that China is accelerating the establishment of what he called a global AI cooperation organization and welcomes all parties to join. Another senior Chinese official pushed back on, quote, closed, exclusive, and monopolistic approaches to tech development. Now, this shows quite a difference between US and Chinese approaches to AI. While the US made models are more often than not only subscription based, you need to pay for them. China seems to be focusing on some cheaper or even free alternatives of AI so that everyone can access.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, that battle. I'm sure we'll need to follow that for many years to come. The leaders all around the table, Andy, the members of the group, you've got the guests that were invited, the leaders from the MENA region, executives there too. Which leader, though, really has set the tone for this meeting?
Well, you said it best at the start of this talk here. Trump just entering the room, everyone is already seated waiting for him, and he comes up and says, I'm the boss. And there's some nervous laughter in the room, and then the White House goes and trims that clip and posts it on social media. We could also see that this joint declaration that was published overnight or early this morning name checks Trump 3 times on this US-Iran deal that we will potentially see signed in Switzerland by the end of the week, praising his, quote, strong leadership in securing a deal. And the document also says the G7 countries now consider this moment the right time to proceed on Ukraine because of this Iran deal. Trump, of course, met with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky, who was also one of the guests here and there in Evian. And Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, who had his own squabbles with Trump, let's put it that way, he spoke of the U.S. president's shift in stance in his stance towards Ukraine as a potential game changer. And also when asked today, once again by the reporters, whether he would now say that Russia is more responsible for what's going on in Ukraine, Trump responded by saying he could not tell them, he could not respond, because that would damage his efforts to settle this, which are, he signaled, now underway. So obviously Trump took the spotlight.
As usual. Andy, very interesting indeed. We thank you as always for your analysis. Thank you. Okay, after the break, Azerbaijan and the United States are looking to deepen strategic ties as President Ilham Aliyev hosts US Congressman Abraham Hamadeh in Baku. From regional connectivity to the peace process, we'll examine what this visit could mean for the future of bilateral relations. Don't go away. Welcome back to Primetime. President Ilham Aliyev has received US Congressman Abraham Hamadeh in Baku on Wednesday. Now, their talks focused on Azerbaijan-US relations, strategic partnerships and regional connectivity. Well, President Aliyev says Azerbaijan-US relations have strengthened in recent months, citing the Strategic Partnership Charter and high-level contacts. The talks highlighted the congressman's co-sponsors of a bill to repeal Section 907, as well as a stronger dialogue with the US Congress and cooperation in trade, energy security, connectivity and technology. The meeting also covered the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process and the trip corridor's role in boosting regional support links. Well, the discussions covered trade, energy security, cooperation and efforts to repeal Section 907, while also addressing the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process and the growing importance of regional transport corridors. Joining us now to discuss all of this from Washington is Ahmed Hashimi, Middle East Programme Director at the Global Policy Institute. Ahmed, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Pleasure to have you with us on Prime Time. How significant is Congressman Hamadeh's visit then at this particular moment in Azerbaijan-US relations?
Thank you for having me. Yes, this is significant. This is a significant visit. Because he is, as it was mentioned a little bit earlier, he is one of the co-sponsors of this bilateral, or rather bipartisan legislative effort that is currently active in the U.S. Congress to repeal Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act. And Congressman Abraham Hamadeh is playing a leading and significant role in this effort. This is a timely and necessary move on the side of the United States, as Section 907 no longer reflects modern geopolitical realities of the South Caucasus region. This piece of legislation was passed in 1992. This is an outdated piece of legislation that unfairly targeted Azerbaijan during a period when Armenia occupied a fifth of its territory. Section 907 banned most forms of direct U.S. government aid to Azerbaijan. Today, a new bill aimed at repealing this restriction has gained traction and secured prominent Republican co-sponsors, including Congressman Abraham Hamadeh. So this initiative actually strongly indicates a mutual desire from both Baku and Washington to forge a path forward. stronger U.S. Azerbaijan strategic relations in terms of having stronger ties. Azerbaijan's Ilham Aliyev and Congressman Abraham Hamada discussed today the prospect of Azerbaijan-U.S. partnership. Hamada noted that he rightfully noted that Azerbaijan occupies a geographically unique location. Indeed, it is unique, both Iran and Russia, two main adversaries of the U.S. and the West. Not to mention Azerbaijan's significance in terms of its connectivity, energy, and trade. So the significance of Congressman Abe Hamada's involvement is substantial. It cannot be overstated. As an America First Republican, his leadership on this issue signals that the current Trump administration views Azerbaijan as an essential strategic partner in this endeavor.
So the repeal of Section 907, clearly very important politically. How much attention is Washington now paying to the South Caucasus as a whole, as a region of strategic competition and connectivity, do you think?
This is another aspect of a relationship between the United States and Azerbaijan that needs to be magnified. What is going on is noteworthy. Regarding the trip or Trump route for international peace and prosperity, also known as Zangezur corridor, we see that there is this desire, for example, both in Azerbaijan and Armenia, as well as in the U.S., to activate this route. They are actively seeking, Azerbaijan and Armenia right now are seeking a historic rapprochement to sign a lasting peace deal for the betterment of their nation's futures. Both societies, I mean Azerbaijan and Armenia, show a genuine desire to leave past grievances behind and achieve regional stability. And President Trump administration's attention to this matter, it's important. We see that, for example, on the Azerbaijani side, they are eager to establish a long-term peace with Armenia with the assistance and engagement and involvement, diplomatic involvement from the U.S., particularly following the restoration of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity and the end of the occupation of its lands. This desire to establishing a lasting peace is only growing stronger in Azerbaijan. In Armenia, too, we can see the same tendencies. The recent parliamentary elections, which was held in June, a couple of days ago, weeks ago, it shows that the Armenian society and Armenian government are enthusiastic about a future where there is peace and stability in the region. And there is this desire on the Armenian side as well to see plans to finalize a comprehensive peace agreement with both Azerbaijan and Turkey. When it comes to the United States, the similar level of enthusiasm is felt in Washington, while the Trump administration currently remains heavily focused on handling the ongoing conflict with Iran. President Trump has kept a close eye on the South Caucasus peace process as well, and especially regarding the perceived Iran failure. What went on in Iran, the military confrontation, is seen by many as a main failure by the Trump administration. The administration in Washington needs to secure a successful diplomatic settlement, and the trip, this peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia, the trip corridor actually provides President Trump with a vital and much needed opportunity to secure a major foreign policy victory and cement his legacy as a deal maker of international peace.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly see why both sides are excited about the prospect that the trip corridor, the Zangezur corridor, could bring. Just give us a sense of how that change could happen. Projects like the trip corridor, how would that reshape regional trade as well as geopolitical dynamics?
First of all, the intensity of diplomatic dialogue and the cooperation in terms of diplomacy, foreign policy, it needs to be maintained. The intensity matters. Now there is this golden opportunity. Maybe there are forces, including Russia and Iran, the Iranian regime, the Russian regime, they are not interested in such a major steps, geopolitical movement in the South Caucasus region. So it really matters. It really is important to keep that level of intensity until the peace agreement is finalized. However, in terms of its achievement of such a peace agreement, it wouldn't be an overstatement that it will provide an alternative, a reliable alternative, a viable alternative route for landlocked Central Asian nations. Even one can go as far as to claim that it will provide China a new reliable route all the way from China to Central Asia and Europe. So this is something that can be a game changer in terms of trade, commerce, energy routes, etc., etc.
And finally, Ahmad, do you think it's reasonable to say that this visit signifies a sort of a new phase emerging in bilateral relations between the US and Azerbaijan?
No doubt about that. Again, the very fact that a firebrand MAGA Republican congressperson is sent to Azerbaijan, it's very telling. Mr. Hamada, Congressman Hamada, is not just a random congressman. He has very close ties with the administration of President Trump. He has very close ties with Israel, and he is a major player in the MAGA sphere. And the very fact that he is involved in this project or in this process of openness and further engagement with Azerbaijan, if anything, is indicative of the fact that America, the United States, is willing and enthusiastic to further expand ties between Washington and Baku and beyond.
Well, Ahmad, it's been great speaking to you. We thank you very much indeed for your analysis.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. A significant milestone has been reached in trade relations between the European Union and the United States. However, a number of disagreements between the two sides remain unresolved. Our correspondent Anita Sharma has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, as the European Parliament approves legislation implementing the EU side of a trade deal with the US. This clears a major hurdle in efforts to avoid a new transatlantic tariff dispute. The agreement stems from a framework deal struck last year between the bloc and US President Donald Trump. Under its terms, the EU will remove tariffs on many US industrial goods and maintain duty-free access for products such as American lobster. In return, the U.S. will keep tariffs of 15% on most European exports. The vote follows months of delays and pressure from Washington. Trump warned that tariffs on European goods could rise sharply if the EU failed to implement its commitments by July 4th. Well, with Parliament's approval secured, Brussels is now on track to meet that deadline. Supporters say the deal provides much-needed certainty after years of tariff threats and trade tensions, but many lawmakers question whether Washington will fully honor its commitments. The European Parliament therefore insisted on safeguards allowing the EU to suspend concessions if the U.S. breaches the deal. The vote also comes amid fresh tensions between Washington and Paris. Trump threatens 100% tariffs on French wine and champagne over France's digital tax on U.S. tech giants. Macron refuses to back down, underscoring the broader disputes that continue to simmer beneath the trade truce. While Tuesday's vote lowers the immediate risk of a tariff escalation, key disputes over digital taxes, industrial subsidies, metals trade, and environmental regulations remain unresolved. The legislation also includes a sunset clause that would see the arrangement expire at the end of 2029 unless renewed. The deal still requires final approval from EU member states, but it does mark a major step towards stabilizing the world's largest bilateral trade and investment relationship. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
Kazakhstan is set to gain access to port infrastructure on the Strait of Hormuz under a new agreement with Iran. Our correspondent reports now from Almaty.
Iran has completed the approval process for allocating a land plot to Kazakhstan at the Shahid Rajai port in Bandar Abbas, located on the Strait of Hormuz. The announcement followed talks between Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Economy, Serik Shumangarin, and Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development, Farzaneh Sadek. Once the remaining procedures are completed, the site will be transferred to the Kazakh site. The ministers discussed the transport routes and port infrastructure. Iran also confirmed its readiness to provide Kazakhstan with opportunities at the Chabahar port, which offers access to markets in South and Southeast Asia. According to Iran, the Zahedan-Chabahar railway is more than 90% complete. It's expected to become operational in the coming months, connecting the port to a rail network linking the Indian Ocean, Central Asia, and Europe. Kazakhstan also said it's ready to consider giving Iranian companies access to port facilities and terminals in Aktau and Kuruk on the Caspian Sea. The ministers also discussed the international north-south transport corridor. Freight volumes along the route rose by 12% last year to 3.5 million tons, while rail cargo traffic between Kazakhstan and Iran increased by 69%. Shumangarin proposed a joint roadmap to modernize transport infrastructure, which could raise the corridor's capacity to 20 million tons annually. Trade between the two countries also continues to grow. Bilateral trade rose by 26.4% last year to $430.2 million. Kazakhstan and Iran say they aim to increase that figure to $3 billion under the existing roadmap and the free trade agreement between Iran and the Eurasian Economic Union. Fariza Kalimursina, Almaty, A News.
Tashkent has stepped forward as a centre of investment diplomacy. Well, this week, leaders, investors and representatives from major international financial institutions are gathering for the 5th Tashkent International Investment Forum. And this year, it has brought together more than 8,000 guests, half of them coming from 100 countries, including heads of state, prime ministers and development banks. Our correspondent has more.
Tashkent is putting itself on the global financial map in a big way. This year's International Investment Forum has brought together more than 8,300 participants, the most since the forum started 5 years ago. This year, the forum hopes to exceed $30 billion in investment and trade agreements that were made last year. Addressing the forum's plenary session, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev outlined 6 priorities for the country's next stage of economic development. from strengthening investor protections and expanding capital markets to attracting investment into strategic industries, green energy, artificial intelligence, transport connectivity, and urban development. The president also announced new initiatives, including the creation of the Tashkent International Financial Center, plans to issue sovereign Islamic bonds, and the expansion of privatization programs. It also has plans to attract greater investment into critical minerals, renewable energy, digital technologies, and major infrastructure projects.
The legal framework of the centre will be enshrined in a constitutional law. An attractive tax system will be created for the centre's participants. Profit tax, value-added tax, property tax, and customs duties will be set at 0%. The free movement of capital and the ability to conduct settlements in any currency will be fully guaranteed.
The forum's significance was reinforced by unprecedented level of political participation.
A sign of this is the growing international interest in Uzbekistan as a reliable and promising partner. That is why the Tashkent International Investment Forum attracts more representatives of governments, business circles, and international financial institutions every year. Azerbaijan, in turn, also views such initiatives as an important tool for strengthening international investment cooperation.
The discussions come as Uzbekistan continues to post strong economic indicators. The country has attracted more than $150 billion in foreign investment in recent years. The economy expanded by over 7.5% last year, while investment inflows reached $43 billion. International reserves now exceed $70 billion, and Uzbekistan's GDP is expected to surpass $180 billion this year. It is Sivir Hojab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
Regional military cooperation is once again in the spotlight as Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan launch a joint special operations exercise on Georgian soil. The Caucasian Eagle 2026 brings together elite forces from all three countries for joint field training. It's yet another trilateral defence tie in the South Caucasus. They continue to deepen. Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
The Caucasian Eagle 2026 is not a one-off event. It is held every year and the host is rotated between Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan. This year it's Georgia's turn. The joint operation will show off each country's capabilities with special operation units from Georgia, Turkey and Azerbaijan undertaking joint field drills. The opening ceremony took place on Wednesday at the Major Galachedia Special Operations Training Center in Mukhrovani. Senior defense and diplomatic officials from all three countries were in attendance, underlining the political way behind the exercise. Georgia's Deputy Chief of Defense Forces and the commander of its Special Operations Forces addressed participants alongside representatives from the Turkish and Azerbaijani militaries. The goal is a practical one: better coordination between the three forces, stronger interoperability, and a shared experience in small units, tactics, and operational tasks. A joint evaluation team with representatives from all three nations will assess the training as it continues. In 2027, the exercise is expected to move to either Turkey or Azerbaijan, continuing a training cycle that has become a regular feature of trilateral defense cooperation in the South Caucasus. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
China has lodged a strong protest against the United Kingdom over its latest sanctions package for Russia. It targets several Chinese companies on allegations of supplying goods to Russia. Well, Beijing says the move has no basis in international law. It is urging London to immediately stop unjustly targeting Chinese enterprises. Manor Makdoum has the latest from Beijing.
China has firmly rejected the United Kingdom's decision to add several Chinese entities to its latest Russia-related sanctions list. It's calling the move groundless and a violation of international law. The Chinese embassy in London said in a statement that the sanctions lack any authorization from the UN Security Council and accused Britain of acting unilaterally and outside the bounds of international rules. The embassy reiterated that China has consistently taken an objective and fair position on the Ukraine issue, saying it has never provided lethal weapons to any party in the conflict. The statement also said that Britain's use of so-called long-arm jurisdiction to sanction Chinese companies is unreasonable and violates their legitimate rights and interests. Beijing called on London to immediately revoke the sanctions and stop exploiting China-related issues to serve its own political agenda. The embassy in London added that China will take all necessary measures to firmly defend the lawful rights and interests of Chinese enterprises. The sanctions are part of a wider UK package announced this week, which also expanded restrictions on Russian individuals, vessels, and entities from several other countries, as London casts a wider net since the start of the war. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
NATO is set to strengthen its air and missile defence posture in the eastern Mediterranean, with Italy deploying an advanced surface-to-air missile system to central Turkey. Now, the move comes as the alliance seeks to adapt to evolving security challenges across NATO's southeastern flank. Here are the details.
An Italian SAMP-T air defence system will be deployed in the Turkish province of Konya as part of NATO's defence planning process. The announcement was made by the Turkish Defence Ministry, which says the goal is to enhance NATO's defence capabilities in the eastern Mediterranean region. Officials described the move as part of routine alliance coordination among NATO allies. The SAMP-T system is one of Europe's most advanced ground-based air defence platforms. It's designed to intercept aircraft, cruise missiles, and various types of ballistic missile threats. The system was jointly developed by France and Italy and has become a key component of NATO's integrated air and missile defense architecture. Konya province already plays a significant role within the alliance. Located in central Turkey, it's home to important military facilities and regularly serves as a venue for multinational NATO exercises involving allied air forces. The latest deployment comes at a time of mounting security concerns for NATO, stretching from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. In recent years, NATO has stepped up efforts to strengthen its deterrence measures and ensure the defense of Allied territory against evolving missile and aerial threats. Turkey fields NATO's second-largest military and occupies a strategic position on the alliance's southeastern flank, serving as a critical bridge between Europe, the Middle East, and the Black Sea region. The announcement comes only weeks before NATO leaders are set to gather in Ankara for a landmark summit in early July. The Defense Ministry, meanwhile, did not specify how long the Italian system would remain in Turkey. But officials say the development reflects ongoing Allied cooperation and NATO's continued commitment to collective defense and security. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
The UK has offered rare recognition of Pakistan's role in the US-Iran agreement. During a visit to Islamabad, Britain's Middle East minister also announced new security funding. Mariam Zia reports now from Islamabad.
For years, Pakistan has argued that it can play a constructive diplomatic role beyond South Asia. This week, it received rare public backing from a key Western partner. During a two-day visit to Islamabad, British Parliamentary Under-Secretary for the Middle East, Afghanistan and Pakistan, Hamish Falconer, thanked Pakistan for helping facilitate negotiations that contributed to the recent US-Iran agreement. He described it as a hugely significant moment, acknowledging Pakistan's critical role in creating an opportunity for regional stability. Falconer's visit went beyond diplomatic recognition. He announced an additional $10.7 million for joint efforts against illegal migration, visa fraud, human trafficking, and organized crime. Falconer also addressed Pakistan's security concerns over Afghanistan, stating that countries facing cross-border terrorism and threats have the right to defend themselves under international law. He also stressed that the dialogue between Islamabad and Kabul remains the most effective path forward. The British endorsement comes as Pakistan seeks to translate its role in US-Iran diplomacy into broader diplomatic influence while continuing to confront security challenges on its western border. Mariam Zia, A News, Islamabad.
After the break, we'll have more top stories of the day. Don't go away. Welcome out. You're watching Primetime. Well, at the Eurosatory 2026 Defence Exhibition in France, Armenia's defence minister held a series of meetings with leading European defence companies. Now, the visit comes as Armenia continues a rapid expansion and modernisation of its armed forces. In the meantime, Yerevan says it remains committed to the peace process with Azerbaijan. Here's more.
Armenia is accelerating its military modernization while publicly maintaining its commitment to the peace process with Azerbaijan, a development that is drawing regional and international attention. At the May 28th military parade, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said the display included equipment from 7 countries alongside Armenian-made systems. These countries were identified as India, France, Russia, China, Iran, and Belgium. Defense officials also indicated that additional suppliers were involved but not shown publicly, suggesting a wider procurement network that may include the United States. India and France have become Armenia's key defense partners. India is now the largest new supplier of military equipment to Armenia, while France has emerged as its main Western security partner. Armenia's Defense Minister Suren Papikyan's visit to the Eurosatory 2026 Defense Exhibition in France highlighted closer defense ties between Yerevan and Paris. He met senior representatives of major European defense companies, including KNDS and Airbus, to discuss possible cooperation in industry and technology. The visit shows France becoming an increasingly important Western partner as Armenia reduces its reliance on Russia. Since the 2020 Karabakh War, and especially after the Russia-Ukraine war began in 2022, Yerevan has pursued a more diversified procurement strategy. Armenian defense analyst Leonid Nersisyan estimates that around 95% of the equipment shown at the parade was newly acquired, highlighting the scale of modernization. Officials say the upgrades aim to address weaknesses revealed in recent conflicts and improve overall defensive capability. However, critics argue that the type of systems being acquired raises questions about Armenia's long-term military posture. Tensions with Moscow have also added to the shift. Ahead of recent elections, Russian officials questioned aspects of Armenia's political process, and no formal congratulatory message followed Pashinyan's victory. This marks a change in long-standing diplomatic practice between the two allies. Armenia will also host the Eagle Partner 2026 joint exercises with the United States from June 17th to 25th, joined this year by France and Greece, focusing on international peacekeeping preparation. Taken together, Armenia is expanding and diversifying its military partnerships, citing defense modernization and deterrence in a changing security environment. Faster procurement shows a shift in security policy, while Yerevan still says it supports regional peace efforts.
The European Union is facing growing internal tensions with reports of an escalating power struggle at the top of its foreign policy leadership. Well, criticism is mounting against both EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen amid concerns over the future direction of the bloc's diplomatic agenda. More in this report.
A storm is brewing inside the European Union, with reports of a battle for control of EU foreign policy. Spanish newspaper El País reported on Thursday, citing diplomatic sources, that some diplomats are comparing a rivalry between EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to the television series Game of Thrones. The newspaper says there is growing dissatisfaction with Kallas's performance. Critics accuse her of focusing too much on the conflict in Ukraine, while paying insufficient attention to the Middle East. At the same time, von der Leyen is also facing criticism. According to El País, some diplomats accuse her of a constant drive to expand her influence over EU foreign policy. Meanwhile, Euronews reported that von der Leyen may be behind a diplomatic reform within the EU that could reduce Kallas's powers. The report says von der Leyen is increasingly making statements on foreign policy issues, effectively exceeding her authority and weakening Kallas's position. At the same time, however, France has proposed strengthening the role of the European External Action Service, which is headed by Kallas. According to a report by Reuters on June 11th, a document circulated in Brussels stating that giving Kallas more power would name to her role within the European Commission. Currently, she is one of the Commission's 6 executive vice presidents and shares responsibilities with other officials in several areas.
The situation remains fragile.
The situation suggests that Brussels' main challenge is no longer limited to external threats. A struggle for influence, leadership and authority at the highest levels of the European Union is becoming increasingly visible.
The United Nations is urging greater international support for Haiti as gang violence deepens the country's security and humanitarian crisis. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is calling for the full deployment of a multinational force to help tackle armed groups as the unrest continues to disrupt Haiti's economy, schools and aid operations.
The transition is moving forward. There is momentum. So my appeal to the international community is simple. Finally, take responsibility. First, strengthen security support with the rapid and full deployment of the force and adapt resources to the progress made on the ground. Second, support the political transition and the country's recovery, schools, health, jobs, to give young Haitians an alternative to gangs and a future with dignity. Third, fund humanitarian aid in a predictable way and at a level that meets the needs. And above all, listen to the Haitian people.
And finally tonight, from packed stadiums to watch parties thousands of miles away, the opening days of the 2026 FIFA World Cup have brought celebrations, heartbreak and plenty of passion from supporters. Here's more.
Football fans around the world celebrated the start of the 2026 FIFA World Cup with cheering, chanting, and waving flags, while others were left disappointed by opening match defeats. Earlier this week, Norway supporters gathered in Boston ahead of their country's first World Cup appearance in 28 years. Their celebrations continued as Norway defeated Iraq 4-1 in their opening Group 1 match. Norwegian fans cheered and sang outside the stadium after the victory, while Iraqi supporters back home praised their team's strength in the face of defeat. France also made a winning start, beating Senegal 3-1. French fans celebrated and chanted after their team's victory. Senegal supporters expressed disappointment but remained confident their side could still progress from the group stage. Argentina fans enjoyed one of the tournament's standout moments, as Lionel Messi scored a hat-trick in a 3-0 win over Algeria. Supporters cheered and danced in Kansas City, while fans in Buenos Aires jumped for joy as the defending champions began their title defense in style.
Like I say, everything I'm experiencing right now is amazing. I was lucky enough to achieve all my dreams, or even more than I could have hoped for, both individually and as part of a team. Today I'm enjoying all of this, having a wonderful team, feeling good and being lucky enough to enjoy it on the field just the way I've always liked. Honestly, everything I've experienced is far more than I could have ever imagined when I was a kid.
Algeria supporters had earlier created a lively atmosphere before kickoff, waving flares, beating drums, and chanting in the streets. But their team were unable to stop the reigning world champions. Elsewhere, Austria celebrated their return to the World Cup with a 3-1 victory over tournament debutants Jordan. Looking ahead, World Cup action continues, with one of the most anticipated upcoming fixtures seeing Argentina face Austria on Monday. France will take on Iraq, while Norway meets Senegal in another crucial Group 1 clash.
Well, that is all for Prime Time for this evening. Please do join us again tomorrow for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.